Hello everyone, my name is Lina Kim, South Korea. This study was conducted under the guidance of Professor Sung-Chun Kim. Today I would like to share findings from a year-long classroom study titled The Emergence of Student System Thinking in Early Elementary Education. The study explores how system thinking begins to emerge among third grade students through sustained classroom practice, rather than asking whether young children can master system thinking. This research asks a different question. How does system thinking gradually emerge when children repeatedly experience it in meaningful context? We live in a world shaped by complex and interconnected problems, such as environmental crisis, social conflicts, and systemic change. These problems require circular and relational thinking. However, education often assumes that young children are too young to grasp abstract concepts like feedback loops and time delays. As shown on this slide, traditional education treats thinking as moving from point A to point B, while real-world systems operate through feedback delay and interdependence. So, the central question of this study was, can a year-long intervention shift third graders from seeing events to noticing underlying structures? Emergence takes time. This study was conducted over one full academic year from March to December. 37 instructional sessions, authentic classroom setting, iterative learning cycles rather than one-time instruction. Instead of teaching system thinking as abstract theory, students encounter the ideas repeatedly through games, storybooks, discussions, and visual modeling. The goal was not immediate mastery, but gradual cognitive transformation. To support abstract thinking, students used visual scaffolds. Four main tools were introduced. First, behavior over time graphs to visualize change. Second, causal loop diagrams to map feedback relationships. Third, the iceberg model to move beyond visible events. Fourth, stock and flow models to understand accumulation and rates. These tools functioned not as assessment instruments, but as thinking supports. They helped the children externalize ideas that were still forming internally. Now I will present the results. The first developmental pattern observed was a shift from reacting to events toward organizing structures. Using storybooks such as The Penguin's Contract, actually this is a Korean translation. The original title is The Tip of the Iceberg. Students learned to distinguish between observable events and underlying patterns. One student said, when I imagine the iceberg model in my mind, things become organized. This indicates that the iceberg model became a cognitive framework, not just an activity. Students began using structure as a way to interpret experience. The second pattern involved understanding time delay. Students moved beyond immediate cause and effect reasoning. For example, one student explained, the cause already happened, but the result appears later. This shows emerging awareness that outcomes do not always occur instantly. As you know, this is a key feature of system thinking. The third pattern appeared during peer conflicts. During recess time, students recognized reinforcing feedback loops in escalating arguments. One student said, if it continued, it would get bigger. Here, systems concepts became tools for self-regulation, not just academic understanding. Systems thinking began influencing social behavior. Through the story, The Noisy Puddle, students explored ecological interdependence. A student reflected, trash doesn't just disappear. It goes around and affects nature. The concept of connection expanded into moral reasoning. System thinking became a lens for environmental responsibility rather than only a technical concept. A key finding is that system thinking does not appear suddenly. It develops along a continuum. First, vague intuitive sense, and next, partial understanding, and last, explicit articulation. The goal is not perfect terminology, but orientation toward relational thinking. Following Vygotsky's perspective, cognition developed first through external interaction. Drawing diagrams allowed students to express thoughts they could not yet fully verbalize. Importantly, accuracy of diagrams mattered less than the thinking process itself. Concepts such as delay and accumulation contradict children's everyday intuition. Therefore, learning required repeated exposure across context. Games, stories, physical activities, and reflection. This created what I call a slow learning architecture. Cluster A to F, shown on the slide, represent the step-by-step stages of the system thinking concepts. Another important finding was emotional engagement. All students reported that lessons were enjoyable. Because activities were playful and meaningful, abstract concepts remained memorable. Emotion acted as a catalyst for cognitive retention. Based on these findings, systems thinking literacy can be redefined not as technical mastery, but as a habit of mind. It represents a shift in how students see the world, not simply what they know. Students began habitually looking for connections, structures, and delays in everyday life. Three implications emerge. First, design. System thinking requires cumulative learning, long-term learning. Second, assessment. Evaluation should focus on changes in reasoning and explanation, not test scores. Third, age assumptions. Even third graders can develop proto-system thinking when learning is experiential and grounded. This is the implications for future education. In conclusion, system thinking is not merely a problem-solving skill. It is an epistemic shift, a new way of understanding reality as interconnected structures rather than isolated events. This study suggests it is possible. Even young learners can begin to develop system thinking through sustained learning experience, and it is verifiable. These developmental changes can be observed and documented through qualitative evidence. And last, it is vital. Most importantly, system thinking is an essential competence for understanding the complex problems for our time. Thank you very much.